I've always been somebody who I'll take in a lot of information really fast and I'll see the patterns and I'll see multiple future possibilities. I'm never the person who's like, it's either this or that. Like, if I can't see at least five possibilities, I've failed. And so I see those things really, really fast. And I'm usually driven to do something about it to shape the future that I can see.
Hi, I'm Tracy Lovejoy.
And I'm Shannon Lucas. We are the co-CEOs of Catalyst Constellations, which is dedicated to empowering Catalyst to create bold, powerful change in the world.
This is our podcast, Move Fast, Break Shit, Burn Out, where we speak with Catalyst executives about ways to successfully lead transformation in large organizations. Today, we are incredibly delighted, honored to have time with Deborah Reuben, who is a huge catalyst, not shockingly, a catalyst for transformative change in finance and technology. As the founder and CEO of TomorrowZone, she empowers leaders to navigate the complexities of innovation with a uniquely human-centered approach, which we love. So, as a starting point, Deborah, we would love to have you get a chance to introduce yourself. Can you share kind of your career journey with a few career highlights that you're proud of that helps us see your catalytic nature?
Sure. I have spent the majority of my career in the commercial equipment finance and leasing industry. So it's about $1 trillion industry that really makes business go. I find it fascinating. And so I started in this industry with Wells Fargo as an application designer and developer, and had to learn the business end to end and create solutions to help them do things more efficiently. And I've always been a student of the business. And I had the opportunity to be part of the startup team for TCF Equipment Finance, which was a regional bank here in Minnesota. And I joined that team right at the start, and I designed and built the apps that they ran on for the first 7 years of their existence. And um, it was really fun and really rewarding to design solutions that could stand the test of time and really um, fit the way that people worked and fit the jobs that they were trying to get done. And so, you know, I had them up and running within the first year with apps that, fit the business. But also the piece I'm proud of there is that I was already within the first year looking for something to replace that would enable long-term scalability, but it didn't exist yet in our industry. And that was an end-to-end integrated platform. And so we were one of the first to implement an end-to-end integrated origination platform in the industry. We won an award for it as a team. And so pretty excited about that. And that initiative was really, I think, a springboard for how the rest of my career was shaped, because I had to lead a massively transformative change through a lot of resistance, because back in that day, people did not understand what it takes to implement a complex system, but also to get a lot of people across an entire organization to adopt a big change. And I felt like I was on the firing line most of the time. Um, but once I got through that and that was implemented as a catalyst, it was like, okay, what's next? Because this
Yeah.
now is in maintenance mode. That's not me. And so, I had to look for the next adventure. And so the thing that I loved about that journey, though, is those solutions really stood the test of time.
Yeah.
And I just ran into somebody recently at an industry event, and we had worked together back in the day, and he had used some of the apps that I created, and he said, I still haven't run into an app that works as well as what you designed for the salespeople, because I designed it for the salesperson, not the sales managers. Um, so it's a totally different experience.
Right.
And so I ended up leaving, and And I joined a software company for a time as a product manager. I saw the industry from an incredibly different lens. Got to drive a lot of change there. And then in 2013, I started my consulting firm and focused on same type of thing, transformative change and helping companies with digital transformation and technology roadmaps. But it's always kind of masqueraded as technology, but really what we do is we help bring the humans along for the change, because you can have the sexiest, most awesome technology. If you don't get the human side right, you're not going to get results. You're never going to get the benefits that you intended. And so back in 2013, I launched my company, which is now called TomorrowZone. And along the way, ended up getting to do some really interesting things that catalyzed change at an industry level. One example is I rewrote the Certified Leasing and Finance Professionals Handbook, collaborating with 40 different subject matter experts from across the industry to rewrite the handbook that's used by people who are studying to take the 8-hour exam to earn their professional designation. So as a technology nerd, being a student of the business has really gone a long way to help me to understand how to bring people along when it comes to transformative change. So that was a big highlight. And then when it comes to leading the industry innovation conversation, this is something that I've been involved in quite a bit. I led an industry future council in 2017 for the Equipment Leasing and Finance Foundation, and we had a group of CEOs from across the industry that came together to look at, what's going on with technology and trends and what's the future of our industry. And then they put together a big report. And I just went back and reviewed that report a couple weeks ago. And it blew my mind, because a lot of the things that we're talking about now and we're excited about now as an industry, I introduced in 2017. It's in writing all throughout that report. I got these executives to not only take a look at what's going on with exponentially advancing technologies, but actually had them interact with, we brought in Google Cardboard, had them interact with VR, and then, use these experiences to help imagine what could the future look like for our industry in 2024. So it was really fun to go back and look at the imagined futures that we did together 7 years ago and see where are we now. And some of the things that they were thinking are pretty spot on. And it's interesting to see what we were thinking, but then where we ended up today. And I've continued to lead that industry level innovation experience and conversation ever since. The latest initiative is the Industry Innovation Council for the largest trade association, Equipment Leasing and Finance Association. And so with that one, I'm pretty proud of what we've accomplished there. Back in 2018, the association CEO reached out and said, hey, our board has decided that we need some sort of a working group to help senior and C-level leaders understand what's going on with technology and innovation, and specifically, what does it mean for our industry? How should our leaders be thinking about this? And so we don't know what it is, what it looks like. All we know is we want you to lead it. And of course, I'm like, yeah, let's do it. That sounds like fun. So I recruited 18 senior and C-level leaders that represented a cross-section of the industry ecosystem to come together on a monthly basis for trend scanning sessions, looking at what's going on in the environment, what do we need to be paying attention to, and what does it mean for our industry. And it was for 6 years, we've been driving the content and the topics that the association is focusing on for their events, their research, their various publications. And we also started doing virtual innovation roundtables 3 years ago. So we just did our 15th one last week. And people come together and they share and they find out what's on the mind of industry peers when it comes to these hot topics. And so those are kind of things that I've been involved in, like always kind of shaking up, causing trouble, helping expand, the thinking of what's possible for the future and what are the decisions we need to make and the actions we need to take now to shape that future. And that's kind of been the theme throughout my whole career.
I just love these stories. I've not ever gotten to hear these stories before. So it's such a treat to get to know you in this way. And it's very much hinted at. I'd love to understand how you relate to the concept of catalyst.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I'm hearing in your stories is you really did change from app developer into something. I won't even name it because I'm excited for you to name it, like something much broader. And so I'd love to hear, as you describe your concept of catalyst, how is it your inner catalyst that has really led you to shift what you're doing in the world?
Um, I love this question. So I was thinking about this. I revisited your book. I haven't made it through the whole thing yet because I actually have been kind of eating it in pieces.
Yeah.
But there was a quote that really resonated. Um, Catalysts constantly take in information, see lots of possibility and a better future state, and have a drive to transform toward that future. And that really resonated because that is my process.
Mm.
And when I look back and connect the dots going backward, that is the through line that I see across my entire career. And I've always been somebody who I'll take in a lot of information really fast and I'll see the patterns and I'll see multiple future possibilities and never the person who's like, it's either this or that. Like if I can't see at least 5 possibilities, I've failed. And so I see those things really, really fast. And I'm usually driven to do something about it to shape the future that I can see.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of been the whole core of what TomorrowZone is all about. TomorrowZone is actually, it started as a framework that I was presenting in a keynote on the future of X. And, it would be like the shock and awe presentation and getting people inspired to make time to think about future possibilities, to change the actions that you take and the decisions that you make today. And the process is, paying attention to what's going on when it comes to the pace of change and where do you see markers of that connect to your life, and then looking at trends across multiple categories and asking, what do these mean? What if they continue? What would be the degree of impact to me or my customers, my career, or my industry? But then also looking at, what's going on across multiple different types of technology and what's possible at the intersections of those, because that's where we can see amazing new possibilities for business models or operating models within a company, or even in my case, a complete new business reinvention. And so all of that coming together helps you to see possibilities for the future so that you can impact the way that you're acting today to make sure that you're doing the things that will lead to that future. And it became not just a framework to share, but it became actually the brand of my company, TomorrowZone. So that thinking is woven into everything that we do, whether we're helping a customer to understand what their strategic technology roadmap needs to look like and how to bring the people along, or we're looking at how do we transform the software delivery experience for a technology company. It's the same thing. Diverge, converge, diverge, converge, over and over and over again. And it can seem really, really messy to other people.
Yeah, totally.
But we always end up with clarity when we get to that converge point. And
Which
that's really rewarding.
it sounds like that's a superpower of yours, honestly, as a as a Catalyst executive, is like the scanning and helping people get to the clarity about, and a little bit, it sounds like the invitation to co-create some of that future clarity together. I'm
Mhm.
wondering what some of your challenges have been as a Catalyst executive.
Um, There are many. And back to what you were saying, co-create is a part of how we do this.
Hmm.
When we facilitate this experience, it's a visual co-creation of the big picture.
Yeah.
You're
which is
hands-on, you're
inherently
touching it, you're
hard.
seeing it, you're saying it, you're interacting with it. It's a totally different experience.
Yeah.
You know, and so I mean some of the challenges, I think I think the biggest one, and I'm struggling with this right now. I mean, when you're trying to when you have a vision and a passion to affect an industry, it can be lonely, especially when, I mean, in finance, the voice of status quo is very loud and strong.
Mm,
And it's hard to paint a picture of the future that I see in a way that other people can really connect to it
mhm,
because I can see it so clear. And I'm usually 7 to 10 years ahead.
mhm.
And so bringing people along and helping them to see a compelling vision that not so that they're afraid of the future. I really have a passion to make the future less scary. I want to create a future that's bigger than the past so that it compels us to be attracted to and run toward that future together. And this is to me one of the bigger challenges, is something I'm continually working at. You know, how can I share this in a way that other people can relate to?
I mean, thank you for saying that out loud because, if we had stopped the interview a couple of minutes ago, we would have been like, yeah, and in 2014, was it? What year did you do that visioning where you're like
Oh,
2017? And like,
2017,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And it's like, you're like, and wave the magic wand, we got clarity, and here's where we are, and we didn't nail it all, but there was
Mhm.
clarity. So the fact that
Yeah.
like this continues to be a challenge because it is such a real challenge for so many catalysts. Like
Yes.
it feels
Yeah.
clear, we can feel it in our body. And yet, so I'd love for you to unpack a little bit, like what have you
Uh-huh.
learned over the years, but also double clicking on like when we talk about catalysts, we talk about them in like an organizational context, but we don't often double click on the fact that there are some industries that literally are more challenging from a regulatory perspective,
Hmm.
from a business model, the impact that, you're talking about, like how the
Yeah.
work that you're doing underpins the economy in a lot of ways. So there's going to be a lot of risk aversion there. So I'd love for
Yeah.
you to talk about how you help bring people along in that specific environment.
So we just talked about this in our roundtable last week with a group of leaders within the industry. We were talking about how do you balance um, the imperative to innovate with the responsibility of day to day.
Yes,
And it's a
exactly that.
whether you're on the business side or the tech side or you're driving innovation in between, you're bumping up against this challenge continually. And one of the things that I brought up for conversation was, we're getting all excited about innovation and getting people to think outside of the box. But the thing that we have to recognize is as an industry, we do have a box. It's legal and it's regulatory, whether you like it or not. And so we need to recognize that. And then we need to ask different questions. How might we still innovate despite these constraints? And it's just a different level and of innovation. It's a different frame for innovation. It's a different way to question, but we can't lose sight of that because I think if we don't recognize that, I think you can frustrate a lot of people who have a lot of really great intentions and they want to do great things, but their vision loses impact. It loses power when it has impact with reality. We want to make awesome happen. We're thinking big, but we actually have to start small and learn forward fast. And in our industry, the traditional model is a big bang change because of some command and control edict without bringing the people along. And so I think that, in our industry, when you have a lot of constraints, to help bring the people along, the thing that I have found to really create a shared understanding of the big picture of where we are now and where we're going is to do it together. I have found that people are less resistant to ideas that they were a part of creating. And so from the beginning, I bring them along for that journey. I don't believe buy-in is something that you bolt on to the end of your vision creation process. it's something that you build along the way by including the right people in the conversation to, first of all, define what is the problem that would be valuable for us to solve, and do we understand the environment in which that problem exists and why it's important to solve it. And if we can get agreement and alignment there, now we can actually move forward, and we work through getting the ick out, recognizing the successes and challenges of the past, and the challenges of today. And once we can get through that, now we can free up people to actually start thinking about new possible futures. I see it happen every time. It naturally shifts. In our model, um, we have a methodology that we've created called the Catalyst Sprint. Before I
Nice.
even met you guys, so I've been using that word. And it just catalyzes new thinking about the current state and future possibilities, so that when we understand it together, we can create the roadmap to get there that we all agree on. And by the ninth session in our work session series, we always see a tipping point every time, where we can shift people to now thinking about the future with an open mind, because we've helped them get through dealing with the past and the present. It just really changes things. And so that's the biggest thing that I have found that really helps. I think of it as kind of listening visually. We hear
Nice.
about deep listening all the time, but what if we listen so deeply that we're actually creating a shared understanding and big picture together that we can all see? Now we don't have people having different images in their head of what we're talking about.
Um, couple questions. First, I love the recognition, because I think Catalyst can like we may develop a domain of expertise, and then as we're catalysts, we might start to catalyze across different domains. And I think one of the challenges, I've had this for sure, is we can be naive if we don't understand that box that you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
So, like, I would often say, well, no one's life is on the line here. But then I was innovating with the CIO of GE in aviation, and he's like, lives are actually on the line here, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
just being like cognizant of what you're doing. I'm wondering, how do you? So another two-part question here. How do you get people to lean into the process to begin with? Because
Mhm.
if it sometimes in that environment, if it sniffs or sense of innovation, people are like, we can't go there. And then
Mhm.
how do you move through the limitations or constraints or the box that they sit in that
Mhm.
process to create the container to help them think constructively?
Um, well, I mean, a lot of that comes down to facilitation. And I believe that if you want to have a great conversation and do problem solving, problem framing and problem solving together, you have to create the space to do that. And the first thing is actually creating space. And it seems really obvious, but we're not doing it. So here's an example. So I'm working with a tech company right now, and we just, as a part of our work, we needed to do a rapid set of retrospectives on a number of projects. And we had to design these conversations in a way that we could get a very rich set of data. We could create a safe space for people to share things that could be, touchy if it wasn't, an awesome project. And also, honor the fact that we were working in a box because these were all billable people, and we had to honor that time and use it really wisely. And so designing the conversation to achieve those objectives together was a big part of it. And then creating the space so that people could arrive and actually focus on what we were doing. But it's not just about the event, it's about before, during, and after. What are we doing before to prepare the people to come in and participate fully? And so we really worked with executive sponsor and the project leader to start messaging and working with these people so that they were ready and they understood why they were handpicked and selected as important contributors to this work and what it means for the company. You know, a lot of times people are pulled into things and they're like, why am I here? And even
Yeah.
if you tell them, you still have to remind them. And so, you know, continuing to orient people back to the why of what we're doing. The other thing that we did was we really every time we got together, we showed a very quick big picture vision, almost like a mall map of
Mhm.
what we're trying to achieve. Here's where you are on the way to where we're going. And so we always have orientation because, you know, even if it's a quick sprint that we're doing, people still need to see, like, are we making progress? Where are we? How much do we have left? You know, and then create the space for them to come in and focus. We heard from, um, you know, from our client that people were coming to them after the sessions and saying that was the best retrospective I've ever participated in. It was almost cathartic. I feel like I was actually heard and that my ideas are valued and that we're going to do something about it. And I actually got to focus.
Yeah.
You can't rock your world in between a stack of half-hour meetings.
So
You have
true.
to actually make space for it. So that's just one of the things that we have found that's been really impactful and effective to help,
Mm-hmm.
you know, with those transformative changes.
I love this. I do want to hand it over to Tracy, but just like a final, like sort of synthesis for me there, because I want to like the connecting the why, like why are we here? But I also hear you connecting like why there.
Oh
And
yeah.
there's a thing that we talk about in our class, which is the breadcrumbing, which is like everyone else would just see the events that you're doing and be like, that's the work. But it's
Mm-hmm.
really like an iceberg because what I hear you
Yeah.
saying is there's all of the work underneath before, during, after, and so on that's making that container as successful and powerful as it is. So thank you for that.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot under the surface.
Mm-hmm. What does it mean to create space for people so that they can build ideas and vision really concretely? Like,
Oh yeah. So for me, it's as simple as let's schedule time
okay.
and let's schedule a big enough block of time that we can actually sink our mental teeth into this
Mm-hmm.
so that we can actually complete a thought
Mm-hmm.
and not have to take it offline or do a
Mm-hmm.
follow-up. And so in this case, we were able to do this in 2-hour sessions. But the other thing that is a trick of mine that I found that works really well is I want fresh brains.
Yeah.
I want the team right away in the morning before they
Mm,
are consumed by the fires of the day. Because the context switching into this way of thinking, if you're coming from fighting fires, is just too taxing.
yeah.
And so that's another element of creating that space, you know, in addition to how you facilitate, how you have the conversations, the language that you use. You know, there's all sorts of tools and tricks that you're probably using yourselves, but you know, just the basics.
Yeah.
How much time and what time of the day?
Yeah, no, I love those. And in class, when we talk to folks about visioning, we literally say, like, seek out spaciousness, that creativity, that a
Mm-hmm.
vision is an imagined future, and to imagine you need to be in a headspace of creativity. We don't
Mm-hmm.
often give them direction on how to create spaciousness or what that means. Like, we'll say, being outside,
Mm-hmm.
being in water, like those are good, but you're giving really concrete things that can also happen at work, which I
Yeah.
think is really, really hard for people to be able to access spaciousness. And so I love
Well,
that,
yeah.
like the start of the day, those are
Yeah.
fresh brains. So I love this very
There's one
tactical.
more though that comes to mind because you use the word spaciousness and that has to do with the actual environment.
Yes.
So one of the things that I learned when I was doing a lot of consulting in person is that our ideas would expand to the limits of the actual physical whiteboard.
Mhm.
The bigger the whiteboard, the further we could go. It seems silly, but it happened every time. And so I would seek out the rooms with the largest whiteboard ever. Well, now in a virtual environment since 2020, we're doing the same thing digitally in infinite murals. and nobody has
Love
to
it.
write, do not erase. We keep the big picture in front of us and we can evolve it as we
Mm-hmm.
go. And so when it comes to spaciousness, that's another way that we're actually creating spaciousness
Literal
for our
space.
ideas, because our ideas have a home.
Right.
I
As
do.
opposed to PowerPoint or a
Right.
Google Doc. Sorry,
Yeah, it's a
go ahead.
home.
It
It's
is
interactive.
interesting.
It evolves.
Yeah.
Because we had talked in the Catalyst Leadership Trust about having you, like, a couple years ago, but I think it's still really present. Like at the beginning, everyone was like, "How do we do this stuff that we were doing live when we create and be in a
Mhm.
creative environment, all this stuff?" And Deborah, we had talked so much about tapping you to have some of those
Oh yeah.
conversations. So I am actually curious, like maybe we come back for a follow-up podcast that's just on that,
Oh
because
yeah, we
I think
could. That's been a
listening to
major
you,
focus for TomorrowZone. We've built
totally.
a whole capability around it.
And I think our all of our audience would love to have like a bunch of concrete ways that you've been able to super effectively do that. So
Yeah.
to be continued.
Yeah. Great idea.
Sure, yeah, yeah. I
It,
mean, those are things that I look at, and it's almost like, talking to a fish and going, "Hey, how's the water?" Because like this is just what we do. And so I'm like, "Oh, that's interesting to you? Cool."
talking to a fish.
Yeah, what you were breathing through will be very interesting for other people, totally.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for that.
I on Shannon just brought in the Catalyst Leadership Trust. So for those listening, we have an amazing group of executives that we convene. That is literally our favorite time each month to come together with the group that Deborah is a member of. And
Mhm.
you started by talking about a key challenge for you as a Catalyst executive is that loneliness. And so would
Yeah.
love to have us bridge as we talk about challenges to, what role is something like the CLT, the Catalyst Leadership Trust for you as a Catalyst
Mhm.
executives?
Um, yeah, so in my experience, being somebody driving change, especially in this environment, has always been a really lonely place. And when I worked for an equipment leasing and finance company, I actually had to go outside of my company to find support and people that understood me, because I was so different from the rest of the company and leading these kinds of changes. And I think that the big thing is, as a catalyst, you have to find your people. You have to find people that can be kind of a network of support for you, even if it means going outside of your company, going outside of your industry. And that's what I did in 2020. I found innovators all over the world and connected with them to help us. We experimented for a whole year with these interactive types of events. It just is, and so the Catalyst Trust has been just inspirational, and it's almost like it's a breath of fresh air, really, because it's like, oh my gosh, these are my people, and this is a place where I don't have to worry about whether people understand me. Or sometimes I've even heard from executives that I'm scary because of how I think about the future. Um, but and that's not my intent. I want to make the future less scary because it's so awesome, the way I see it in my mind. But you don't always run into people who understand that. But in this group, I do, and they inspire me. And so I think that it's fuel. It's just fuel for my brain.
And for my body, I'd say, right? I come out of whether it's a trust meeting or the all trust assembly, and I just feel like I'm buzzing.
Yes, 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 that definitely does happen. You're like just inspired. I call it brain on fire. That's what happens after.
Right?
Totally.
Totally. And I'm an introvert. And so meetings like that can often exhaust me. But I've learned that part of what's hard for me is when I have to slow down how fast I think, or I'm not allowed to make the random connections. And so
Mhm.
to be in a group where I can just move at speed, and honestly, the group often moves a little faster even than me, which is so like that's so unusual.
Actually, I love the speed of it. And I love we talked earlier about diverge and taking in a lot of information. I actually love it. Like we've got people speaking and there's presenting and the chat is going wild. And there's like new insights just coming from all sides. It's really, really exciting.
I couldn't agree more.
We love it too, and just the like the diversity of, I love one of the guiding principles of, like, like-hearted but different-minded, like the diversity of
Hmm.
the perspectives, while also having that shared catalyst experience, right? Because
Hmm.
for me, I haven't gotten to say this to you, Deborah, but it's like I was so grateful to create this, because especially when I was in the corporate world, I craved this, like you were talking about. Like,
Yeah.
where are the people who don't think I'm crazy? Where are the people who are going to push me, not just tell me that I'm on the right path, but push me to think bigger and dream harder
Yes.
and all of the things. And it's like, oh, so thank you. We're so grateful to have you there. Um, Final fun question. We'd love to hear maybe one or two, if you have them, of your favorite famous catalysts, past or present, and why. Who inspires you?
So I'm glad that you gave me this question ahead of time, because it was really fun to think about. And my gut response was to think about two athletes. So I know we're talking about being a catalyst in the business world, but my first thought went to Roger Bannister, who was
I
the
don't know who
first
that is.
human to break the 4-minute mile back in 1954. So it used to be something that was thought impossible for humans to achieve. But once he broke the barrier, within a couple months, another person, and then another, and now it's like, it's way below 4-minute mile all the time. But he helped take the limits off, and I think that it's a really great inspiration to take the limits off. But then when you bust through those barriers, it can inspire others to do the same.
You're
And
literally making my body tingle and my ears water. I mean, my eyes, not my ears.
and
But
then the other is like that. So I was a nationally competitive gymnast in my younger days, and so I was really inspired by the Olympics over the past few weeks. And Simone Biles is a US elite gymnast.
woo!
She rocked the Olympics, but she's like the Roger Bannister of US gymnastics. And she is, first of all, she's competing at an age that we thought impossible. We actually thought that that was impossible for a human to do that. And not only is she doing that, but she's doing it at a level that is unsurpassed. The difficulty of the move she is executing, we used to joke about the stuff that she's doing as if it were impossible back when I was training. And so, she is continually changing the face of the game, and she's stretching the limits of what's possible by example. And as she's doing that, you're starting to see the level of others come up. And so it's inspiring a whole sport, but she's also a catalyst for self-care for athletes with what happened in 2020 and her stepping out. And she got a lot of flack for that, but I understand that. I've been through what she went through. Actually, I experienced that. And in a sport where you are encouraged to continually deny and ignore your own physical needs,
Mhm.
I thought it was just groundbreaking for her to do that and to do that on a world stage. And I think that that has also changed the conversation in a major way. And so, I think that these two catalysts, they're doing it in the athletic world, but I think they're really inspiring no matter what realm you're trying to impact yourself, because it's all about, continuing to take the limits off for yourself, and it paves the way for others to do it too.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing. And it's so great. She's not just inspiring, she's turning around and helping those who are coming. I don't even want to say behind her, but like with her on the journey.
Hmm.
And I just love your framing of like removing the limits. I have, like, I just think it's beautiful. So thank you. And
Yeah, yeah.
apropos to like being in the box and removing the limits all at the same time, right? Like those
Oh,
two things
yeah, the
can't exist
box
at the
that
same
those
time.
gymnasts are competing in is
Yeah.
very extreme and
Yeah.
very difficult. The rules are crazy, and they do it.
Yeah. This has been an amazing conversation, Deborah. Thank you so much for sharing this part of you. It's been really fun.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. It's been wonderful, and I just really appreciate the opportunity to participate with the Catalyst Trust. It has just been an inspiring blessing for the past couple of years.
Thank you.
We love having you.
Yep. To our listening audience, if you'd like to learn more about how to create bold, powerful change in the world, be sure to check out our book, Move Fast, Break Shit, Burnout, or go to our website at catalystconstellations.com.
And if you enjoyed this episode as much as Shannon and I did, and I'm sure you did, please take 10 seconds to rate it on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever it is you listen to your podcasts. And inevitably, you have other podcasts in your life, so we'd appreciate
Catalysts
it.
in your life.
What did I say?
Podcasts.
Oh, other catalysts in your life. That is so silly. Other catalysts in your life. Please hit the share button and send a link their way. And Shannon, thank you for having my back.
You're good. I'm still drying up my ears.
That's right.
Thank you.
Bye.